of things. Welcome, Mayor. Thank you for joining. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. So thank you all for coming. We're just going to stand now and the national anthem. We'll have to sing along. We'll have to sing along. Please go ahead. Thank you so much. We're going to go on to land acknowledgement, and I'll call Ms. Christine Mcintosh to please lead us with this.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Halton as we know it today is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor the respect of 4 directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exists. We'd like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much. So just to quickly go through the agenda that we have. So we're now at welcome, which is going to be done by myself. And then we'll have the mayor. And we have some video greetings that we'd like to quickly play. And we will get our speakers introduced. So today I am actually joined with Ms. Adosa Adamidode. She is my co-host, and we will be working through this together. I'm just going to stop sharing for now. So welcome and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining African Caribbean Council of Halton as we celebrate Black History Month. My name is Adejisola Atiba. I'm a resident of Milton. I'm the president of African Caribbean Council of Halton. I tell people to call me Lady Abba just because Adejisola is quite exotic, right? So if you can't say Adejisola, Lady Abba sounds pretty good. So thank you for joining us for the Burlington Proclamation celebration. That beautiful drumming you've been hearing is played by Baba and the trumpet. He's a maestro. He can play, like, God knows, maybe 10 different instruments. Drumming is used from all over Africa, and it can be used to send messages around from city to city. At ACCH, we want to be a part of the solution. We know and appreciate that there are issues over 400 years old, but we also know that to rebuild, there has to be investment of time and trust on both sides. And we believe that change will and can happen. According to Joyce Meyer, I may not be where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. This is not utopia, but it is a starting point to build and repair relationships. As people of African and Caribbean heritage, we know where we're coming from. History is powerful, but it should be used as a guide, not as a stumbling block to hold us back from progressing and giving ourselves, our children, and generations unborn a fighting chance. I like to quote a lot of people, so I'm going to quote Maya Angelou here. She said, "I have great respect for the past. If you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. I have respect for the past, but I'm a person of the moment. I'm here, and I do my best to be completely centered at the place I'm at. Then I go forward to the next place." Martin Luther King also puts it perfectly in this quote. "As my suffering mounted, I soon realized that there are 2 ways which I could respond to my situation, either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course." Again, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish as fools. Again, that is Martin Luther King. Our goal at ACCH is to see our history and culture taught in schools year-round. It's not about just 1 month. And the good news is, I'm sure every one of us can attest to the fact that Black history or culture is not 1 month anymore since 2020. We know that a lot happened that caused that to happen, but you know what? We have decided we will continue to speak up and engage our elected officials and community in those dialogues and conversations to make change happen. Why do we celebrate? We celebrate because people of African and Caribbean heritage have been instrumental in shaping Canada as we know it today. It is important to remember and celebrate all these achievements. For hundreds of years, we need to be more open-minded and deal with each other with care and empathy. Notable to mention, I like to mention people that are living, is Honorable Jane Augustine. She's done a lot and she keeps doing a lot for us. And so we need to remember and acknowledge all these people. As proclaimed by the General Assembly, the theme for the International Decade is People of African Descent, Recognition, Justice, and Acknowledgement. In proclaiming this decade, the international community is recognizing that people of African descent represent a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. Around 200 million people identifying themselves as being of African descent live in the Americas. Many millions more live in other parts of the world outside of the African continent. Our team as African Caribbean Council of Halton is the Black family. We face a lot of setbacks, whether consciously or otherwise. We're looking to hear what the changes, initiatives that will be taken to make sure that there is more inclusion and equity, and to ensure that the future is now, because that is the Canadian theme. The future is now. Are we making sure that the future is actually now for us? Yes, we keep talking about our children, but what about us? Us, our children and generations unborn, what are we doing to be intentional to make sure we're actually supporting the community? There's so many things that affect our family. Our youth are affected in school, women, small business, professional careers. It's one thing to be Black and then you layer women, being a woman on top of that. There's so many things that we want to learn from our elected officials. We will follow up with you, Your Honor, Marian Mead-Ward, about setting up African Caribbean caucus at provincial level to ensure that we continue the conversation. And a lot of people have been asking, how might we help? You can help by making sure that you look within, because change starts with you and I. Who are you employing? Are you ensuring that there's diversity and inclusion? Are you employing people that look like you? Is there, personal or conscious or unconscious bias? These are things that we really need to look at and think before we hire. So look and hire people that looks like Canada. Canada is diversified. There's a lot of diversification going on. I live in Milton and I look at my right and my left and I see different people, but that's not what we tend to see when it comes to organizations. That's not what we see when it comes to going to government offices. What are we going to do to make that change happen? Join our events, learn about us, learn about our culture. We're open, we want to learn more. The more we learn, the more we're able to actually tolerate each other. If you have information to share, don't wait until we reach out to you. Reach out to us. Let us know how you can help us build up. Donate your time to us. And yes, donate your funds. We need money to run a lot of programs that will support us. Go to our website. We will post our website on the chat. And so today we want to hear from our elected officials on their efforts in making Burlington in particular and Halton region in general to be a more inclusive community. But before I introduce the mayor, I got an email from Shelby about an incident that happened yesterday. Somebody crashed an event and they were putting a lot of slurs and saying a lot of negative things. What does that tell me? It tells me there's still a lot of work to do, period. It tells me we're not embracing each other. That's basically what it is. So our leaders need to be more, you need to speak up more for everybody, for inclusivity, for diversity. And so on that note, I'd like to introduce our mayor, our honor, Mayor Marian Mead-Ward. She was elected on the 29th. She was elected as the 29th mayor of Burlington, Ontario in October 2018. She's also the second woman to hold that position in Burlington's history. She used to serve as a counselor. She was also a journalist. She lives in Burlington with her husband and 3 children, and they're within Terrier, Boston. So on that note, please join me to welcome our mayor.
Thank you so much. And in such a short space of time, you have lit up the challenges that are in front of us and before me, and you've put challenges at my feet, and I thank you so much for that. I am absolutely delighted and honored to be here with all of you today and see some familiar faces who were part of last night's event as well. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm joined on this call by at least one of my council colleagues who I spied, Councillor Rory Nissan, who has been involved in the One Burlington efforts, which is just phenomenal. And you know, I love what you said about this being a journey, and that we want to. I know I'm not where I need to be, but I also know I'm not where I was 5-10 years ago, and I do hope to be able to say every single day that I'm not where I was yesterday. So this is part of that journey, and this is part of what we're doing together. It starts with conversation, right? So I'm just thrilled to be here, and I do have a proclamation for you. I have a slide presentation to share with you to go through some of the things the city has been working on. But I do want to recognize that I'm speaking to you as a white woman from a place of privilege. I want to acknowledge that's my lens, and my role here today is really to try to give you an overview and some information about what we have been doing, and open the dialogue with you about what more we could be doing. So that's what I hope to accomplish. I know that the city and my council colleagues are committed to that journey with me, and we're here to listen and learn as much as share information with you. So. Without further ado, I will read the proclamation for Black History Month. So feel free to give it like a virtual drum roll or a round of applause. I love that music at the beginning. It was awesome. So feel free to intersperse that. So our proclamation for Black History Month here in the city of Burlington. Whereas Black History Month recognizes the contributions of people of African and Caribbean descent, what you've made to Canada, shaping our identity. And whereas Black History Month was first recognized in Ontario on February 1993, making the 200th anniversary of the passage of legislation prohibiting the importation of slaves into Upper Canada. And whereas national recognition occurred on December 14th, 1995, when the House of Commons unanimously agreed to a motion presented by the Honourable Jean Augustine to recognize February as Black History Month. And whereas the United Nations proclaimed 2015 to 2024 the decade for people of African descent, an important step in the international community recognizing that people of African descent represent a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. And whereas Black History Month in Canada is very important as it educates Canadians, few Canadians know that slavery once existed right here in Canada, or that many of the British loyalists who came here after the American Revolution were Black. And whereas Black History Month continues to provide the city of Burlington with the opportunity to learn and to share and to celebrate the important contributions and the vital role of Canadians of African descent that you've made to strengthen the social, economic, and cultural mosaic of our community, our province, and our country, and the world. Therefore, I, Mary Ann Mead Ward, Mayor of the City of Burlington, do hereby declare February as Black History Month in the City of Burlington, and I ask all residents to join with me in celebrating. Thank you.
Woo!
So I do have some slides, if we can bring those up. And I'll give you sort of a quick overview in the next 15 minutes or so of what we've been doing in the city. And I think they're on, that you have, that's great, awesome, you have them. So here we are for Black History Month. We've just done the proclamation. So moving to our next slide, please. We'll be a good team here. Thank you. In this month where Black history is honored, I did want to highlight the history that is in the making right here in Burlington and what we've seen over the last year since we last came together for this celebrating this month in our community. So our global pandemic has brought to light what many people have witnessed and observed for years: the disparities in how a health crisis affects different parts of our population in different ways. And we know the Black experience has been more challenging in cases and deaths of COVID-19 around the world and right here too. It's been said that we are all in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. Some have had a yacht to get through this pandemic, and some are still trying to bail themselves out of leaky rowboats. And all the while, racism has continued, as has the fight against it. And we saw even last night how much work we have yet to do. The Black Lives Matter movement gained global attention after the tragic events and killing of George Floyd and others in the United States and in Canada. Here, Regis Korchinski-Paquette, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, DeAndre Campbell, and so many more. Our residents came out in the thousands last June, and that's just one of many pictures that were taken, to march locally, to show their support against racism here and all over the world. And this was the biggest turnout throughout the Halton region for this kind of event. It was an important moment in Burlington, and it did send a message of solidarity for our community. And it also showed me as mayor how much racism still exists in our community. I saw it during and after that event, and it came out in all of its ugliness. We have our work cut out for us, and we cannot pretend that racism isn't here. So we will continue to work with groups like yours, Lady Ava, and eradicate it and ensure our residents know every day that this is unacceptable, and we welcome everybody in our community. Next slide, please. This photo you see is a temporary art installation that was in front of City Hall on our sidewalk in August to continue the message of support and inclusion with the Black Lives Matter movement. It was entirely citizen-led, created by a local resident who wanted to remain anonymous. She crowdfunded the paint costs from supporters. The response on social media to this was overwhelmingly positive. The majority of the community was right there in supporting this message, and I take my strength from that. However, there were still voices of opposition, and again, it just reminded me how much work we have left to do. The city does embrace ideas for public art of this kind because we know art is a really powerful way to raise awareness and express the pain and the struggles, as well as the hope that our community feels. And we had the Red Dress Project not long after that to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women at Spencer Smith Park. And we're always open to more ideas from you. So please think about that and get in touch. Next slide, please. Not long after that, I did meet with some of the organizers of the Black Lives Matter March one-on-one and had them on my show, Burlington Matters. Noah Bowen, Tejan Saunders, and Isabella Malland, 3 young people in our community, and put this together, which was incredible. Noah and Tejan joined me on Burlington Matters, and a few weeks later we had similar conversations with others where I heard their stories and personal experiences of racism here in the city and obstacles that they face. And I can tell you it was truly eye-opening to hear these stories from them and from other people in our community, and I'm grateful for everyone who did take the time and the courage to share those stories with me. I know it was painful to do so, and I appreciate the learning that you gave me through that. Next slide, please. Well, Lady Abba, you said it at the beginning that you need elected officials and folks in positions of leadership to join with you, and I know that. My learning and my growth in this area is an ongoing journey as well. I know that I have a platform to reach our community and beyond. And in addition to the Burlington Matters show that I just mentioned, my blog saw over 350,000 visits last year. I have social media channels on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with tens of thousands of followers, LinkedIn as well. And my monthly newsletter, which goes out to over 12,000 people, and media opportunities. And so I share that to acknowledge the platform that I have to speak and to use that in the service of our shared goals, to shine a light on the work that you are doing, the events and holidays that are important to members of the Black community, and of course, to honor and recognize our history in all of its parts. So whether it's remembering Lincoln Alexander Day in January, marking Emancipation Day in August, or sharing photos of the Black Lives Matter marches and art installations, or even sharing in the celebration of the inauguration of the first Black woman Vice President of the United States last month. And as many of you may know, I'm a dual citizen, so that touched me very personally. It's essential that not only our Black community sees themselves in the content that I share, but that the rest of the community sees it too and recognizes the diversity and inclusivity of people throughout our city. Last March, I hosted high school students for a lunch on International Women's Day when we could still gather in person, and I know those days are coming again. And I was so happy to see the diversity in that group of amazing young women and have some great dialogue together about the challenges they are facing in their own paths to greatness and talk about the road to making a difference in politics for the next generation. In November, I joined a great panel of women in leadership hosted by the Public Sector Network to discuss how we can better navigate the path to a more inclusive and gender equitable public sector. Next slide, please. So what are we doing here at City Hall? Part of the reason for historical injustices in Canada is how they exist within our own institutions like education, policing, government. As part of the government, we know we can't build a community free of racism if we aren't also dealing with the issues of inclusivity and diversity within our own workforce here at the City of Burlington. Not just at City Hall and in our leadership ranks, but all through our teams in city services, parks and recreation programs, bylaw officers, and everyone who interacts with the public on behalf of the city. A diversity and inclusivity strategy was identified as a key deliverable in this council's Vision to Focus plan. And as a result, in July of 2020, City Council approved, as part of our 2020 budget process, hiring a consultant to assist us to achieve this key deliverable. Staff have sourced and contracted with the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion, who is an industry leader in supporting equitable workplaces for all. Their mission is to help organizations be inclusive, free of prejudice and discrimination, and to generate the awareness, dialogue, and action for people to recognize diversity as an asset, not an obstacle. And some of the things they are providing to us at the city include a diversity census and inclusion survey to better understand our own workforce demographics, education and training for all of our leaders to support them in becoming inclusive leaders, a policy and documents review to ensure that our employment systems do not pose any barrier for any group or individual. And ultimately, with their help, we will build a strategy that will be ready to implement by the end of this year. We also have support from our very own Accessibility and Advisory Committee and our Inclusivity Advisory Committee, two citizen committees at the city. And Council signed, with their support and help, the Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable Charter, which is an explicit declaration of commitment to the values of equity, diversity, and inclusion, which also lists commitments that we have made and guiding principles for us to follow. Councillor Nissan, who's on this call, is a founding member of the One Burlington Citizens Group, which celebrates faith and culture while embracing diversity in our city, and is an open supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. Last year, just before the pandemic, as part of the World Interfaith Harmony Week and in honor of Black History Month in Burlington, One Burlington and the Port Nelson United Church hosted the event Rise and Struggle, the Gospel and Soul of Truth and Reconciliation. Councillor Nissan and I right now are working on how to bring together people who are leading anti-racism work in our community and identify ways that our entire City Council can best support their efforts through things like awareness, funding, policy, and I do encourage everyone out there who's listening today to please reach out to my office if you have any ideas or suggestions. We know there's a lot of great work that's already being done in our community and lots of boots on the ground making things happen. So we're here to listen and enable everyone out there in your groups and your circles to join in this work. Next slide, please. So let's talk about recognition, representation, funding, and ideas briefly. We know that recognition matters, and it's an important way to celebrate diversity and promote inclusion in our community. And our new Key to the City program, which began in 2019, is one way to do that. So if you know of somebody in our city who is making an impact in our community through leadership, philanthropy, sport, culture, please connect with your ward councillor or my office. Please let us know. We want to shine a light on the amazing and incredible people in our community who are making a difference and improving our city. And the Key is one way to do that. You can find more about the criteria for the Key to the City on the city's website at burlington.ca, Key to the City, which is on your screen. We've also asked our staff to amend our naming policy for city assets, trails, parks, things of that nature, to make sure that when we are naming or renaming a city asset, that it also reflects those who have or are advancing anti-racism and equality in our community, and to show support for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community and our history and heritage. Representation matters, and I was pleased as a member of the Burlington Economic Development Board to see our business development arm of the city unanimously approve the 50-30 challenge last month, and that aims to have 50% women and 30% visible minorities on their board. And I know that recruiting is happening now, so if you have some names of folks, please point them in my direction or have them connect directly to ECDEV. Funding also matters, and it's one of the ways the City of Burlington supports community initiatives of all kinds through our Community Support Fund. And this fund provides up to $5,000 a year in financial support to residents and community groups who want to enrich and connect the Burlington community through sport, recreation, art, and cultural experiences. So informal, unofficial, or formal community-based organizations, not-for-profits, grassroots groups, schools, faith organizations, individual people, your own neighborhood, artists, or community champions, you're all eligible to apply. And you can find out more about that on the burlington.ca Community Support Fund. So in closing, I want to, next slide please, leave you with a question. As my colleagues on council and I look for additional ways that we can help eradicate racism in our community. I don't want to assume that I know how to solve the problem from my position of privilege, and nor do I want to prescribe the solution. I do need input from people who are living the impacts of racism and who are doing the work on the ground right now. So I want to ask you for your insights and your ideas and expertise. I want to know what you think of initiatives like Black History Month and how we celebrate it here in Burlington. Feedback on our Inclusivity Advisory Committee at City Hall, the Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable, our One Burlington group and festival, and what you think of ideas like the Black Lives Matter March and making it annual, or a flag raising event. We're talking internally about a panel of local community champions to discuss solutions and possible actions that we can take as a city council. We are open to ideas and we are open to taking action. We want to collaborate and advocate with you together on solutions. So as we celebrate Black History Month together and every other month of the year, Please know that I am here and I encourage you to reach out to me and my team. Give me your thoughts and your suggestions so that we can work together and ensure that racism has no place here in Burlington and that Black history continues to be celebrated and recognized for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. We will be following up with you on all the various ideas and recommendations that you mentioned, and that's why this is recorded. So be warned. So I will go ahead and play some of the videos that we have. I'll have to share my screen again. Please give me a minute.
Happy Black History Month, Burlington. Thank you to the African Caribbean Council of Halton for organizing this important event, and thank you to all those tuning in. February 2021 marks the 25th anniversary of Black History Month in Canada. This is because of the work of the Honourable Jean Augustine, who was the first Black woman Member of Parliament, as well as the first Black woman Cabinet Minister in Canada. This year also marks the 75th anniversary since Viola Desmond resisted racial segregation in Nova Scotia. As we celebrate Black History Month, we recognize that Black history is our history. We honor the contributions that Black Canadians have made and will continue to make in our society. We celebrate the innovation, strength, and determination as we work towards a more inclusive and diverse Canada. This year's theme is "The Future is Now," which gives us a chance to acknowledge the life-changing work that Black Canadians are doing right now, including Black frontline essential workers who have been there for us and our loved ones during the pandemic. The Black Lives Matter movement put a spotlight on our duty to combat racism in all of its forms, in a way that is informed by the lived experiences, voices, and history of Black people. We must continue our efforts to combat systemic racism and keep working to build true and lasting equity and equality. As your Member of Parliament, I have sought out Black voices on a range of issues since I was elected, both through formal organizations like the Halton Black History Awareness Society and informally through community members. I am a friend of the Parliamentary Black Caucus and have supported their calls to action to end systemic racism in Canada. As a federal government, we have been taking concrete action to empower Black communities through investments in an inclusive economy, addressing the root causes of inequalities and capacity building. Last year, we launched the Black Entrepreneurship Program, investing over $90 million to make sure that Black business owners can recover from the pandemic and grow their businesses. We also launched the Anti-Racism Strategy, and we will work hard to address anti-Black racism and systemic inequalities prevalent throughout Canada, including the criminal justice system. Anti-Black racism should be embedded in our institutional practices, including recruitment, access to funding, and policy making. As elected officials, we need to do better to practice active listening and reach out to equity-deserving groups beyond standard government channels. There is more work to do, and we as a government remain steadfast in our commitment to do this work. This February and all year, I encourage Canadians to learn more about the rich and diverse history of Black Canadians, to learn of the challenges and the successes. It is on all of us to build an inclusive country, and knowing our history is a big part of that. Thank you again to the organizers of today's event, and happy Black History Month.
One more video to go.
Hi, I'm Pam DeMoff, the Member of Parliament for Oakville North Burlington. 25 years ago, the first African Canadian woman elected as a Member of Parliament, the Honourable Jean Augustine, secured unanimous legislation to pass an historic motion that designated February as Black History Month. And here we are, 25 years later, and we continue to honor and celebrate the contribution of generations of Black Canadians to our nation. Through education and events throughout the month, we celebrate and appreciate the vital cultural impacts of African Canadians in the arts, economy, and society, both locally and nationally. The theme this year is "The Future is Now," offering us an opportunity to recognize the transformative work that Black communities are now doing in helping to build a better and more inclusive future for everyone. We want to see a better future now, a future where no one is falling through the cracks and everyone is valued, protected, and respected equally. So, happy Black History Month.
So those were messages from Honorable Karina Gold and MP Pam Damoff. A sincere appreciation to them. I'm going to hand it over now to my co-host, Edosa Adamidode. She's a lawyer and also a board member of African Caribbean Council of Halton. Over to you, Edosa.
Thank you so much, Adejisola, and thank you all of you for attending and recognizing the importance of this historical day. We've heard from a lot of powerful women. I love women because women make the difference in our world. And so I'm so delighted to introduce a next great, powerful woman who is a community leader, passionate about change, and founder of Act on It. The name speaks for itself. This is no other than Nicola Blair. Please join me to welcome Nicola Blair. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. I would firstly like just to say that thank you for allowing me to join such a panel as this. We know we have a lot of work to do. We know what we need to do, and it's a matter of how do we strategically get there. Some of the key things that I'd like to introduce to let you know about myself. Yes, I'm the founder of Act on It Therapy. We are a therapeutic organization that basically provides mental health support for children, families, and community. We also had to expand to developing our ensuring that business leaders also get that support, because we're recognizing that even as a Black member of the community, I need to put the agenda out there. We need to recognize as healthcare professionals that there is a unique need for the Black community when dealing with trauma, when dealing with some of the challenges that life throws at us. I'm obviously a part of the African Caribbean Council of Halton, and as well as I partner with other organizations like the Caribbean African Coalition of Canada. As a unit, we recognize the importance of coming together as a body of action and putting that in place and being strategic about our partners. Some of the comments that Marianne Mead, your board, has referenced was about how we need to look at different areas within our society and making those changes. One of the key things that I'm actually passionate about is to ensure that we have lasting change, to ensure that our change is not just a fleeting moment or a fashionable trend, and how do we make it remain on the agenda. And so it's important for myself, and I often talk about, my position before I came to Canada was in a position of the National Health Service, worked there for over 9 years, worked in the criminal justice system, have worked in social services, and I've seen a lot of things that needed to be changed then. And rather than reinvent the wheel, we've got to look at what is being done around the world and how could we utilize those things and make them better for Canada. So how do we do that? The key thing for myself is it's got to be about data. Without data, we have nothing to stand on. We cannot put forward a need for change if we don't have the data that is needed to be relied upon. It is important that we look at this from a federal level so that it comes down into the provincial level and the action is lasting change. And when I speak to that, I speak to that of being from the healthcare service. It is one system that we know that basically connects each and every public service body within any society. First of all, we need to recognize that in the past 25 years, the population of Black people within Canada has doubled. So the visual minority is somewhat something that needs to be turned on its head. We have a presence here. The numbers speak for itself. And so when we're talking about data, we have to look at in which way, in how is data within the healthcare system reflected upon the injustices, and how do we make things better? How do we make the change happen? And how some of those things that we must start with is, how is the training? If we're 50% below the visual of all GPs, that tells us we have a shortfall. It tells us that what is happening to our medical professionals that are not in the industry to treat our Black community. And I understand the needs of other members in that in the community. We have to recognize that as part of the service that I provide is intercultural therapy. And what that looks at and what that is a study of the ethnological research based on a person's cultural identity, their experience of the country that they live in and how they see themselves, but more so, what are the strategies and the coping strategies and measurements that are already existing within that community and how we can build upon it. Often Black people feel that they are doing what is conceived as what the system wants me to do. We need to recognize that we are empowered in our own right and we have a voice. And how we do that is by recognizing that we are falling short as a society in meeting the needs. And that goes across all spectrums, from education, judicial, healthcare, policing, and that has to be changed in policy. Without policy change, we have nothing. It does become a fashionable trend. So I salute yourself, Mayor, of the efforts that you are doing. I salute the fact that the efforts are being made, but more importantly, we have to say, what are we doing with regards to having lasting change? How do we keep this on the agenda? So Act On It Therapies is very much part of that change. And through some of the organizations, we are coming together as a collaborative force to show some form of organization as a united voice within the lasting change for Canadians and to be an example to those around the world. So together, I think it's important that we make change about us, with us included. And with that, we will get lasting change. I'd like to thank you again for having me. There's so much more I could talk about, but I think we have to really look at how the issues of racism is infiltrating every single area of public services and how we really push towards having a government body that looks at quality assurance so that we hold people accountable and measures are put in place in alignment with the data that we have and what does success look like. So thank you again for having me. I know I need to wrap it up. So over to yourself, Adejisola.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Well said, well said. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and introduce our next speaker, MPP Jane McKenna. She's the MPP for Burlington. She's a parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Labor, Training and Skills Development since October 31st, 2019 to present. She's a member of the Standing Committee on Estimates. She worked in advertising, ran her own small business called Rainmaker Consulting. She's a mother and a grandmother. Over to you, MP Jim King.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, Nicola, I am very humbled listening to you speak, and it's touching to hear what everybody else, all the speakers prior to myself saying a few words. We have to grow every day, and growing is learning and being humbled by what people say. So thank you very, very much for all the speakers that have come before. I'm pleased to join you all this afternoon as we celebrate and recognize Black History Month. Burlington is a community like no other. In good times and in bad, we are there for each other. We always rise to the challenge. This year we celebrate the Black family and acknowledge its representation, identity, and diversity. Unfortunately, we know that racism continues to be a hazard to our health of Black families here in Ontario and right across our great country. But we all have an important role to play every day in fighting racism and oppression, to deny those the oxygen who look to hold others back. We know that roses can and do grow in concrete. To quote Tupac Shakur, Black families are roses growing in the midst of concrete, unquote. We recognize roses as being beautiful, even with their imperfections. And we know that people can become something great coming from a place that's not recognized as great. The reality is that you never know how strong you can be until being strong is your only choice. Michelle Obama once said, and I quote, that history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take a life of its own, unquote. As we celebrate Black History Month, we all have a responsibility to take action to support those in our community who are struggling, to help them find hope and thrive. I am proud to stand in support of our African Caribbean community here in Burlington, in Halton region, and right across Ontario. Thank you for including me in this celebration today.
Thank you so much, MPP McKinnon. It's a pleasure to know that you stand and acknowledge the fight continues. Due to time constraints, I'm going to be introducing the next speaker, who is a resident of Burlington. His name is Niyi Olusoga, and he has 15 years experience in oil and gas and telecommunications. And just for time considerations, we would be keeping our time slots to 3 minutes. Thank you so much, Niyi Olusoga. Thank you.
Thank you, Edosa. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. Thank you, Miriam Midward and Lady Ava. Nice to meet everybody. The Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. This also relates to the 1985 theme, Afro-American family. Negro History Week, as it was known, and Black History Month, as it is known today, has inspired numerous events and communities all over the world for many centuries, making this year no different. We usually look up to the narratives of the ancestors and legends amongst our Black family across the world, while we find hope in creating new stories to make history. Initially, Black History Month was a way of teaching students and young people about Black and African contributions to the world. The representations of the Black family, its representation has been stereotyped and verified from the day of slavery to present time. Racism continues to be a hazard to Black families' health today. I usually get to console my 10-year-old daughter about the beauty of her skin when her classmates unleash racist remarks at her. For example, another said she looked like poo. That wasn't too pleasant, and then took me a lot of hours to calm her down after that remark. And also explain to her to stand tall when all her classmates look at her during Black History Month classes. Or I find myself educating my 45-year-old neighbor that Africa is a continent and not a country. Or explaining to him that we do not have lions and tigers roaming the streets of Nigeria. And also we have electricity and running water. Not the best, but it exists. The question that faces us today is whether or not Black History Month is still relevant. Is it still a vehicle for change? Or has it simply become one more school assignment that has limited meaning for children? Has Black History Month become a time when television and media houses bring out all their Black materials for the public to see? I would say that Black history should be part of the school curriculum and be discussed naturally and not specialized in any way. I consider dedicating 1 month to discuss Black History Month as segregation in itself. Students need to understand that there is a legacy in regard to the enslavement of Africans and the treatment of Blacks in Canada and around the world. The issues that Black people face today are linked to the history of individual, systemic, and institutional racism. There was a time in history that African people were not considered to be full human. We were bought and sold as property on days like Black Friday sales. What we see happening today is rooted in that history of anti-Black racism. And we do an injustice to our children and students if we try to ignore it and not let them know this. When connections can be made to history, the understanding of why Blacks respond the way they do and why they experience what they do becomes clearer. I would say that the government does not need to wait for a George Floyd to be murdered or a Black Lives Matter movement before more grants is released to Black-owned businesses. That in itself is systemic racism and inequality. A true reflection of inclusion should be practiced on a daily basis. Just like Jane said, roses that grow from concrete, a poet from Tupac Shakur, represents the way that someone can become something great, coming from a place that is not recognized as great. Black families are roses growing in the midst of concrete. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very, very much. Very wonderful contribution. Thank you, and insightful. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just wanted to quickly say something. I mean, one of the things is that, by the way, NI is very new in the country. So if this is happening, if they're calling his daughter that she looks like Pooh, it means we have a lot of work to do. I was in a meeting actually with Nicola yesterday, and a young lady mentioned that she's never experienced more racism than anywhere else in Halton. So yes, we're talking about it now, but the point is we really, really need to act on it. We need to make that change happen. It has to go beyond talking. And so we will be following up to see what strategies can we really put in place to help our children feel included in everything and not being abused and put down by other people just because of the color of their skin. Our next speaker is MPP Effie Trentafilopoulos. She's the MPP for Oakville North Burlington. She's a member, Select Committee on Emergency Management Oversight, member Standing Committee on Social Policy, Vice Chair Standing Committee on Justice Policy, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Long-Term Care, past Chief Executive Officer and Director of Save the Children Canada. And Effie holds a Bachelor's of Law and a Master's of Law in International Trade and Competition Law. Please join me to welcome MPP Effie Trentafilopoulos.
Thank you so very much for that kind introduction. I'm really delighted to join you this afternoon as we mark Black History Month or Black Heritage Month. And I must say to you that very few people get my name right the very first time. So I commend you for doing it, and thank you so much. Needless to say, growing up in Toronto when I was a very young kid, having a name that was 17 letters long did present a big challenge to me as well. So thank you for doing that. It's an important time here as we mark the contributions of those of African descent in Canada. And the theme this year is the Black family. And I would like to say a few words about how this is important to our community here in Halton, but also to our province as well. Over the last year, individuals and families and our whole society have faced challenges greater than most of us have ever faced. The COVID-19 pandemic struck our country last year with the first known case in Ontario in January 2020. And since it first hit, we have lost more than 6,500 people to COVID here in Ontario. Each one of them was a cherished loved one, and we mourned their loss with their families and friends. Yet the nature of this disease has meant that too many people had to keep apart from their families during this time, when families, in fact, were needed the most. We had to, and still need to, prevent the community spread of this disease to protect our older loved ones who are most at risk. I know that this separation of families has actually created a lot of pain for many. Too many are isolated and alone, and this disease and the demands of fighting it have taken a great toll on families. We know that Black families are at the heart of the strength and resilience of the Black community in Ontario, but we also know that Black Ontarians face the challenges of racism and discrimination as well. In Ontario, we must all be conscious of this fact, and Premier Ford and our government at Queen's Park know that we must work to assist Black Ontarians and the community. Our government is helping through such measures as the Black Youth Action Plan with $60 million to help Black families and communities recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are also investing $1.6 million over 2 years for a new anti-racism program, and both of these work through grassroots community-based groups. We are working with the Black community to help strengthen families. We are also helping with policies such as financial support to parents with kids in school during COVID. We updated the school curriculum with a new course for financial literacy to help students get the knowledge they need to budget and plan their finances in life. And after the problems you may have heard about at the Peel School Board, the Premier announced new changes in Ontario schools to end grade 9 streaming, strengthening sanctions for racist behavior in teachers, and providing teachers with additional anti-racism training. Our government wants to work with the Black community, and we will listen. Let's share ideas about what programs will help, what we need to do in schools, in our healthcare system, and as we rebuild the economy. I know how hard people and their families work to make a better life for their children. I am a proud daughter of an immigrant family who came to Canada from Greece. And my parents worked very, very hard, struggled, and made sacrifices so that they could give their children a better life in Canada. For this to work, families need to be supported and need to be strong. I want you to know that the Ontario government will always be on your side, and we will always listen. Premier Ford is often quoted as saying he is for the people. We want to ensure our government is for all of the people of Ontario. During Black History Month, we recognize the contributions in history of Black Ontarians to our province. Every person in Ontario is of equal worth and equally deserving of opportunity. Halton region, as you know, has a rich vein of Black history. In the 1850s, 20% of Oakville's population were Black, and James Wellesley Hill, who escaped slavery in Maryland, helped over 800 people escape slavery. You can still visit his home in Oakville today, and TV Ontario's website profiled his story in December. This is the kind of history that everyone in our community needs to hear, and it shows that the Black community has been part of the fabric of our province and our country since well before Confederation. So thank you very much for inviting me to join you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MPP Effie. That's awesome that you've acknowledged the importance of the time that we live in, and you've said a lot of important initiatives that the Halton region is initiating in terms of moving this dialogue, and I thank you kindly. But I like to say very quickly on behalf of ACCH, and we are out of time in terms of our schedule for today, and if you could permit me, I ask for your indulgence for the next 10 to 15 minutes for this historical event. I apologize on behalf of the leadership, but we would ask for your indulgence for the next 10 minutes. So without further much ado, I am so delighted to introduce to you our next speaker, who works in Burlington, Eaton in Burlington. She's also a director at ACCH. She's a mother, a passionate community leader, and an advocate. This is no other than Christine Mcintosh. Christine, thank you for coming to the stage. And a warm welcomes for Christine, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Adosa, for that introduction. Thanks everybody for giving me the moment. I know that we're tight for time, but Black History Month has always been a time to recognize the pioneers who've championed civil rights and the many trailblazers whose accomplishments have impacted us all. It's been more than 26 years since the movement was introduced by Miss Jean Augustine, and yet inequality still permeates and shapes the society. So we need more action, and doing things like this is a great start. As a parent, I want my daughter to learn all her history and all of our history, and it needs to be inclusive. This doesn't mean I want us to tear down our heroes, but I think that we need to find ways to educate our full history and lift up other voices. And we do this by being the voice of stories that have been left out of the past. The Black History Month honors the past, but it celebrates the present, and it also inspires the future. So happy Black History Month, everybody, and thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Christine, for making it short and sweet. Really appreciate you. Our next speaker is actually my colleague. His name is Babatunde Fafowora. He's a resident of Burlington. He's for over 10 years, is a noteworthy leader in the sales and marketing space with strong footprints in the financial services, telecommunication, and consumer goods space. Over to you, Babatunde.
Thank you so much, Lady Abba, and also I appreciate this opportunity of sharing and adding to this conversation. As a first-generation Canadian immigrant, moving here has been a joy for my family. Being able to pursue the Canadian dream to create something better for the family. Now, this joy has only been dimmed by occasions of unconscious and conscious bias towards the way I look. A feeling I've never felt ever growing up in West Africa, Nigeria. This was and is still a rude awakening to me as we gather to celebrate Black History Month today. As from our earliest days and Canadian history, Black history has always been Canadian history. We are the part of the people who helped and is still helping to build Canada. A key part of our history that comes to mind was between 1931 to 1949, where 4,810 Black immigrants coming states helped to build the Canadian Pacific Railway. We are also part of the brave men and women that risked their lives in battle to defend the rights and freedoms that we are fortunate to have today. In the First World War, for instance, the No. 2 Construction Battalion was Canada's first and only all-Black military unit who, despite being turned away or given non-military duties, remained eager to show loyalty to their country. And even though they were still not given the same rights as others, the men in this unit were proud and excited to help win the war for Canada and the other countries that were fighting on the same page. So on that note, I would say I am proud to honor this rich heritage, but however, I believe Black History Month shouldn't be treated as though it is somehow separate from our collective Canadian history. The Black family also, no matter who they are or where they come from or how they should have the opportunity to achieve their dreams. I'm confident to say we're on the right path as sessions like these and random acts of support like the Burlington Solidarity Match, which Her Worship Mayor Word uses our platform to support. And as I want to say, as long as we keep at it, as long as we don't get discouraged, as long as we are out there fighting the good fight, not just on one day or 1 month, but every single day and every single month, I have no doubt we're going to live up to the promise of our finding ideals and enable us achieve the Canadian dream. And on that note, I'll end by saying this. Now is the time for allies of the Black family to be actively anti-racist and not be passively anti-racist. Thank you very much.
Wow. Well said. I'm so delighted that we have you here today, and your narrative just points to the danger of a single storytelling. And I thank you, Fafowora, for sharing your experience with us. Once again, I apologize for the timing. I'm going to go right to the next speaker, who is a French-speaking community leader and an entrepreneur, Jean-Claude Nagasso. Please, you're welcome to the stage. Can we just give him a warm welcome? Thank you.
You're on mute, sir.
You're on mute. Jean-Claude?
Okay then, thank you. Thank you very much for thank you for the elector. I'm not going to be long. I just want to say we know our problem, we know our story. Black History Month is about our past, our present, and our next future. Now, what is the next? 2 years ago, I'm living in Milton. I decided to run for the election. I came here in Canada in 2012. 2 years ago, I decided to run to the council election. Some people called me and said, who are you? Who are you to try to challenge us? I said, okay, I know what I'm doing. Let's wait after the election and see the result. You will see who I am. As I said, as a community, together we can do more than what we are taking. And we have to do with this the time. We need to stand up and make sure that we have our people every aspect of representative. We need people as a school board trustee. We need people to represent us as a councillor. We need people to represent us as the provincial, even federal. We can do it if we are together. Nous pouvons le faire et nous avons, si on veut, on se met ensemble, nous pouvons avoir nos représentatifs partout, dans tous les aspects dans ce pays. Because this is Canada, and we know our rights, on connaît nos droits. Il n'y a que nos gens que nous avons votés qui peuvent nous défendre. It's only our people who can defend our rights, who know your problem and your right, we can defend you. So I say thank you for everyone. Thank you to put this together. We need to go, we need to carry on. This is the time, we have the opportunities. Let's do it. Let's come together and do it. Thank you very much. I have a wonderful morning of Black History Month.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Jean, for that. Moving very quickly, that was your experience in the community is well noted and acknowledged as well. We're going to have a quick collage. And I also want to apologize for the third time that we're not going to be able to do Q&A given the time constraints. But I would encourage everyone to please provide any questions that you may have on our website and also post to us. We'll be obviously glad to channel those questions to the appropriate staff. So we're going to quickly take the collage and then I'll just do the closing remarks. So Adejisola, are you ready for the collage?
Yes, please. If everybody can please put their camera on, as many people as are comfortable to do that. Thank you. Just going to press screen. So big smiles, everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lady Abba. Oh, I wasn't talking. Are we done the collage already? Okay, great. Thank you again. Once again, I want to really thank everyone. We've had a lot of powerful women here in positions of power that have provided their voice and their acknowledgement to the importance of this historical day. On behalf of the board, leadership, members of ACCH, your wardship, MPP McKinnon, Councillor Nassan, our distinguished residents of Burlington, our wonderful panel of speakers, and of course, all other protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased and delighted to say thank you all for this engagement and attending our historical and symbolic event. A moment like this, I would say, causes us to really pause. We need to pause, we need to reflect, and we need to reconnect with our values and our history as a people, as a community, and as a country. On a final note, I want to remind everyone that ACCH is having a proclamation of Black History Month at Halton Hills on the 18th. I wish everyone could connect and join us for that virtual proclamation. We also would like us, we'll continue our mission and our vision at ACCH to build, to elevate, and to advance the cause of inclusiveness and equitable African Caribbean community in Halton. Thank you all so kindly for attending. Merci beaucoup, and I wish you all a fantastic day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Nori, Councillor. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah.
Great to see you too, Lady Ava. Couldn't find my mute button.